You're not someone without goals. In fact, it's the opposite. You carry big dreams inside you. You can clearly picture a better version of yourself, more successful, more disciplined, living a life you can genuinely be proud of. In your mind, everything feels mapped out. You know what you want, and deep down you even know what needs to be done to get there. But the problem is simple. You don't start. You often tell yourself, I'll begin tomorrow. I'll start when I feel motivated, or I just need a bit more preparation, and then tomorrow comes. But nothing really changes. You keep postponing, keep waiting for the perfect moment that never actually arrives. What makes it even more frustrating is that you're aware of your own potential. You know that if you truly committed, you could go much further than where you are now. But the gap between knowing and doing becomes the place where you get stuck. You're not lacking ambition. You're not lacking vision. What you're missing is consistent action, and that's exactly why, even though your mind has traveled far, your life still feels like it hasn't moved at all. You've probably called yourself lazy more times than you can count. You assume the problem is a lack of willpower, discipline, or effort. But the truth isn't that simple. What you're experiencing isn't really laziness. It's your mind responding to pressure, expectations, and underlying fear. Your brain is designed to conserve energy and avoid discomfort. When a task feels too big, too unclear, or carries the risk of failure, your mind instinctively pushes you away from it. You're not consciously avoiding it, you're wired to. And over time, this avoidance turns into a habit that feels automatic. That's why you can spend hours thinking about what you should do, yet still struggle to take the first step. It's not because you don't care. It's because your mind is trying to protect you, even if that protection is holding you back. The important thing is this. If it's a psychological pattern, it can be changed. But you can't fix it by criticizing yourself or forcing yourself to try harder. You need to understand what's happening inside you. Because once you realize the issue isn't that you're incapable, but that your system is misaligned, you finally have a real chance to break out of that cycle. You may spend a lot of time thinking about your future self. You picture yourself successful, confident, living a life that others admire. These images aren't just clear, they feel real, almost like you've already touched that version of your life. And that feeling is exactly what keeps you stuck. When you imagine something long enough, your brain starts to respond as if it has already happened. It gives you a sense of satisfaction, a hint of pride, even a kind of fake motivation. But here's the problem. You haven't actually done anything. You're receiving the reward without taking any action. Over time, you get used to feeling good just by thinking instead of doing. And when it's finally time to act, the part that's difficult, repetitive, and doesn't bring instant results, you lose interest. Because compared to imagination, reality feels slower and far less exciting. That's why you feel like you have potential, but never seem to move forward. You're not lacking ambition. You're stuck in the emotional reward of achieving something without ever truly beginning. You might say you want success, growth, and a better life. But deep down, there's a quiet fear holding you back. The fear of failure. It's not always obvious or intense. It doesn't stop you instantly. Instead, it shows up as hesitation, procrastination, and endless reasons to not start yet. When you don't take action, you can still believe you're capable. You get to hold on to the idea that if you really tried, you would succeed. But the moment you begin, things become real. You might make mistakes. You might fall short. And worst of all, you might have to face the possibility that you're not as good as you once believed. So doing nothing becomes a form of self-protection. It shields you from disappointment, embarrassment, and judgment. It keeps your self-image intact, but at a cost. You stay stuck. You choose safety over progress. And here's the irony. By avoiding failure, you also avoid success. The very thing you're trying to escape becomes the reason you never move forward. You don't lack goals. You have too many of them, and most of them are big, ambitious, life-changing. You want to transform your life, improve quickly, and achieve clear results in a short time. But without realizing it, that ambition becomes a weight you carry. When a goal feels too big and too far away, your brain doesn't know where to begin. It can't see the next concrete step. Only a long, unclear path ahead. The result is overwhelm. Instead of starting, you delay, not because you don't want to act, but because you genuinely don't know what to do first. You might spend hours thinking, planning, and imagining how everything will unfold. But the more you think, the more complicated it all feels. And eventually, you end up frozen in place. The truth is, the problem isn't your ability. It's that you're trying to take on something too big from the very beginning. When you don't break it down into smaller steps, everything feels heavy. And when it feels too heavy, your natural response is simple: you do nothing. You're not consciously choosing to procrastinate. You're being pulled toward what feels easier. Your brain is wired to seek comfort and quick rewards. A short video, a few minutes of scrolling, lying down just a bit longer. All of these give you instant relief. No effort, no pressure, immediate satisfaction. Meanwhile, the things you should be doing, studying, working, building skills, require time, focus, and often don't provide immediate results. Your brain compares the two options, instant reward versus delayed payoff with effort, and naturally, it leans toward the easier path. The problem is, when you repeat this choice enough times, it becomes your default. You get used to avoiding discomfort, used to delaying action, and eventually, anything that requires discipline starts to feel unusually difficult. You're not weak. You've simply been trained to prioritize short-term comfort. But the cost is clear. A few moments of ease traded for a lasting sense of regret. Because deep down, you know you're capable of more, yet you keep choosing not to act. You may have been waiting for the right mood to start. When motivation hits, you perform well, sometimes even beyond your usual limits. But then the feeling fades, and you fall back into old patterns. This makes you believe the problem is a lack of motivation. In reality, motivation was never something reliable to begin with. Motivation comes quickly, but it disappears just as fast. It depends on emotions, and emotions are constantly changing. If you only act when you feel like it, you'll move forward a little, then stop, over and over again. And because of that, you never go far enough to create real results. People who achieve what they want aren't always motivated. They simply have something you haven't fully built yet: discipline. Discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. It doesn't rely on emotion, it's built on habits and commitment. And the truth is this: if you keep waiting for motivation, you'll stay stuck. But if you start acting even when you don't feel like it, you're building something far more powerful, the ability to move forward regardless of how you feel. You tend to believe that only big moves truly matter. If you can't do something perfectly or make obvious progress, you'd rather not do it at all. You wait for the right amount of time, the right state of mind, or a perfectly structured plan before you begin. But that way of thinking is exactly what keeps you from ever starting. You underestimate the power of small actions. A task that takes 10 to 15 minutes feels insignificant, so you ignore it. But what you overlook is that every meaningful result is built from small steps, repeated consistently over time. It's not their size that matters, it's their consistency. When you keep waiting for a breakthrough, you unintentionally miss the process. And without seeing progress, it's even easier to lose motivation. This creates a cycle where you constantly feel like you're not enough, when in reality, you're just not giving yourself the chance to begin small. The truth is, you don't need to do something extraordinary right away. You just need to start with a step small enough that you can't refuse it. Because in the end, it's those small steps that carry you further than any sudden leap ever could. You may have been waiting a long time to feel ready, more prepared, more confident, more certain. You tell yourself that once everything is perfect, you'll finally begin. Seriously this time. But the truth is, that moment almost never comes. You'll always feel like something is missing: more time, more knowledge, more motivation. And if you keep waiting, you'll keep standing still. The people who truly change aren't the ones who feel ready all the time. They're the ones who start while still feeling unsure, confused, even doubtful of themselves. They take action first, and confidence comes later. Action doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. One small step today is worth more than hundreds of plans that never get executed. When you start, you break the cycle of procrastination. When you keep going, you build momentum. And when you stay consistent, you slowly become the person you once only imagined. You don't need the perfect moment. You just need to begin, even when you don't feel ready.